century, there have been courageous souls who accepted torture and death rather than give up their faith. To these, truth was worth dying for. Their persecutors could take from them family, friends, their jobs, their homes, and their possessions, but they could not take from them the love of God and their desire to obey Him according to His word and the dictates of their conscience.
We are standing here in the Criminal Museum of the medieval town Rothenburg ob der Tauber. And when we look at all of this equipment around us, we stand amazed at man's inhumanity to man. This is equipment that was used by the state to bring people to confess to various crimes. And later the church became involved, and whenever there was a suspect that somebody was spreading heretical information or was a heretic, then they would hand them over to the state, the inquisitors, and they would torture them to gain a confession from them. Now, the instruments that we see around us here are really quite incredible. This one here was a particular hoist where you could attach a person, and the way they would normally do that, they would tie the hands behind the back in this kind of fashion, and then raise the hands at the back and hook them over this hook, and then hoist the individual with this hoist. And depending on the severity, you could, attach these stones of various weights, or a number of them, to the feet, so that eventually the arms would be torn out of their sockets, and that would inflict incredible pain. Here you had a finger screw or thumb screws, however you wanted to use them. You could put various fingers under it, or you can put a thumb under it, and then screw it down and create quite a sensation of pain. It is incredible what people will think up in order to inflict pain. This one over here is particularly obnoxious because you would tie the person down. It could be on his stomach or on his back, and lay him along this bed, and there would be these rollers over here that can move with spikes on them, metal spikes, very sharp, that of course would inflict incredible pain. On the other end, you would hook this over a rope that tied the legs together, and then you would stretch the individual over the rack, driving these nails into the back or whichever side was in contact with them. These are more rollers. You could also assist with the rolling action over the other side. So it is incredible that people could actually do something like this. Over there we have the spike chair, and there is, the notion that maybe it was just a medium to frighten people, but there's also a fair amount of evidence that it was actually used. You would sit on those spiky metal spikes, have your feet inserted into that plank and screwed tighter and tighter, and that must have been a very uncomfortable way to sit. Now, all of these methodologies were used from the 14th century onwards, and it's interesting that it lasted for more than 400 years. Only in 1813 did they actually stop this process and removed it from the state of Bavaria. But to think that humanity could do this to humanity. Now, during the Inquisition, the Dominicans were the ones who controlled the Spanish Inquisition, and they handed people over to the state, and millions of people were subjected to this kind of process. Later on, when the Jesuits started the Counter-Reformation, they were responsible for the Inquisition in Rome. So you had these rival factions, actually, or co-laborers in some instances, furthering this methodology. What is amazing is that they made no difference whether it was a man or a woman, they would be equally subjected to this procedure. And once again, it proves the fact that women are tougher than men because they were more able to handle the pain. It is claimed that some 60% of them could actually survive without a confession being tortured out of them. When heretics or supposed heretics were subjected to this kind of torture, it is interesting that the inquisitors would stand by and record the procedures. And the confessions were often forced from the individuals, and of course there were no confessions at all because some people, just from the strength of the pain itself, relinquished and gave up and confessed to crimes that they had never committed. People were also ridiculed. They were paraded through the streets, normally with their clothes either torn or totally removed to shame them in public, and they were paraded through cages. So there were incredibly harsh mechanisms of dealing with criminology, something which is unthinkable today. But human nature has not changed. Human nature is still the same as it has always been. And could it be possible that man's inhumanity could once again rise to a level such as this? There's so much cruelty in the world, and if it weren't for the Spirit of God, where would we be? These are body clamps. They were designed to create pain and to distort positions and make people exceedingly uncomfortable. This one here in particular is quite interesting. You put your legs in there, your head in over there, and you could move it around so that the person would be crunched up and in exceedingly uncomfortable positions. There's another body and neck clamp that you could extend and stretch a person. A head clamp where you could turn those screws into the skull, leg clamps, and up there is a picture of a severed hand. So it seems that the punishments that they had in the medieval times were very similar to some of the punishments we even have in religious systems of the world to this very day. So mankind still has the same nature. And it's only God holding back the winds that prevents humanity from going back to this kind of situation.